Along the line of what you're thinking. I think we need to come up with two, possibly three possible scenarios to present to the board. And everybody be in agreement with those three as general. There he is. Did you get a phone call? Just try to call you.
Not that turned out.
Oh, yes, you did. I was playing. But what we need to do, I think, is we need to look at our scenarios, and we need to have several of them. And then I think of those, we can have them just out there, But the committee as a unit, as an entity, needs to make a recommendation for one of them. And what I thought the majority rules, whatever you think. Because I know which one I think so far, and I think other people think differently. But that's all right, but we'll still have them all there. The board may go with the recommendation of the committee, or the board might want to go with something different. Or they may want to adjust it altogether, but the board needs to come up with something. This is really more or less to provide them with information. And I think that this committee needs to look at things. I keep hearing say, well, the county will not go along with this, and people won't go for this and this. We need to look, first of all, what is the best interest of the students, where they can get the programs they need the best and the best possible education. I think that needs to be the first thing in our mind when we do these things. Second of all, I think we need to be cognizant of the taxpayers, But our first priority must be the students, I think. We have to take into consideration the other thing also. Does anybody disagree with that or got any comments about that?
Can't disagree with that.
But because I think we all have different ideas, but we've got to look at it and discuss it and figure out how we're going to do things. Okay? Now, last meeting we talked about a scenario including one high school. And then I was asked to go ahead and compare what it would cost to do a one high school with a two high school. Dr. Ward, I'll give you one of these. And what I did was, I didn't come up with a PowerPoint on it because there's just several little things that we can adjust. And I've got it on the screen there anyway. And it just kind of compares things. Now, I went a little bit more depth on this, estimating how many bookkeepers it would cost and secretaries and things like that. So I went back first of all to the alpha scenario. Principal, about $65,000 I'm guessing. As long as we keep everything consistent, that'll make our comparative, it'll be the same. And that's one thing I've tried to do throughout this thing. I don't want to go through here and say, well, this school, just because it's got more students, they're going to give them more money. But there are cases where that might happen. One thing that I did do on one high school, I figured a teacher-pupil ratio of 20 to 1, which is very low, really. It's not that bad at all. But if you have two high schools, you'll have about 719 students in each high school. I did drop the ratio down to 18 because I think the smaller the school, you're not going to be as efficient, and you're just going to take a few more teachers. Does anybody disagree with that? Dr. Moore, what do you think?
Say it again, the smaller the school, the more...
You're going to have a lower teacher-pupil ratio, naturally, because with the larger school, you're going to be able to run the courses and everything and schedule it. Have you done you've done a lot of scheduling, haven't you?
Have more teachers.
Yeah, I have, and if it's a larger school, scheduling is easier in a way because you can have more in the class and you can balance it out. But the smaller the school, the lower the teacher-pupil ratio is going to be.
And I think the larger the school, the more the kids, or the more kids, the more offerings that you can
more programs.
Develop, more programs.
So we're going to lose some of this stuff. I just want you to understand that. And a lot of this stuff is stuff that I have seen from, I worked for quite a few years in education, so I've got an idea on how things work. And if I'm wrong, Dr. Ward, he's worked along, so has Ken Lou. So if you see anything that you disagree with me, please say, well, let's discuss that or something like that. Because just because I perceive it to be a certain way does not make it correct. You don't hurt my feelings, okay? So I thought, well, For a school of the size you'd have to have 4 assistant principals. You'd have to. Now, I'm going to tell you something else. I've worked in large schools. I never worked too much in real small schools. So I understand the large school better than the smaller schools. I want you to understand that. With 4 assistant principals, and I keep hearing this thing about discipline problems. That is directly related to teachers being out in the hallways during the classroom. Your schedule, a 4-period day, has less discipline problems because you're out in the hallways, less time to be able to create problems. Class change is where you have your most problems in lunches and things like that. That's when you have your problems. But if everybody, and it takes a strong principal to be able to get their assistants together and work as a team and work in zones and be out there during those times. And the teachers have to be outside the door where they can see the hallways and the classrooms and do it that way. If you don't do it that way, and people are not there, if they cannot see an adult face, they'll get into trouble most of the time. The design of the building is also key. Whenever you're designing a building, whether it be 1 or 2, you've got to be able to stand at certain points and see everything in all directions. You know, so the design is key. If you don't do that, because that I will eliminate that. You can have more discipline problems in a small school than you can a large one, or vice versa. It's according to the staff and the design of the building. Now, another thing people don't seem to understand. A school is nothing more than a microcosm of the community. If it's going on in the community, it's going to go on in the schools. You're not going to tell me you can have a community that does not have drugs or anything and have drugs in your schools. It won't happen. If it's in the schools, it's in the community. Therefore, you've got to look at each community a little bit different. So, does anybody disagree with that? But I will disagree. A lot of people say that large schools, you have all kinds of discipline problems. Not necessarily. It's according to the staff and professional development. It's key. And school atmosphere. Whichever we do 1 or 2 schools, we need to do a survey to find out where the students feel like they're safe or not and so forth, and find out what the problems are, and have teams of students who are out there to work with them. And what we did in Sullivan County, we always took students who were some of the troublemakers. We made sure they were on this team. We educated them to the problems, like if they were bullied, what it feels like to be bullied. They become some of the students who were out there trying to help us the most, out in the hallways. Therefore, you do those things. There's programs out there, and the federal government pushes them, which y'all know we talked about federal government before, but there's certain things they do. We do need to have that. Now, so I figured 4 assistants would be pretty good for that size school, which would be about 1,300 students if you take out the CTE students and we have the CTE center. Because you're going to have at least 100 students out of all Carter County going to that. That's a small number, isn't it? Probably more like 1,200 students, which is not bad. That's a good size for a high school. And then you could also, you know, something we're going to have to look at, which school we're at, look, the scheduling process, where you have the students at the school 5 days a week and bus them to the CTE center. I'm a proponent of AB schedule. You know what the AB schedule is? Like Monday, they'd be at the school. Tuesday, their rotation would be at the CTE center. Wednesday, they just keeps going, A and B. And people say, well, what about that 5 days a week? Doesn't matter, just flip it over the next time. Every 2 weeks it comes out even. It's no big deal. People get used to anything like that. You can have a no-bail system where you, at a certain time, if the clocks are all synchronized, you release students from your class at one time, don't even ring a bell. I've seen that happen, it works well, once you get used to it. Most things that we're going to be encountering in the future is something that's going to require us to get the students and the staff to get used to those types of things. It's amazing what you can get accustomed to, isn't it? Okay, counselors, 4 counselors, 1 for each grade level, and the way you organize that is also important. With the 4 school counselors, you can take the freshmen, they'd take them all the way through the seniors, then drop back down to freshmen. That's the best way I've seen it done.
That way they get to know them all and everything, and they know what they need, and they just work that group of students all the way through.
And you can trust that one individual throughout the high school experience.
Yeah, it's a lot better. Now, if a student does not make the point to drop down, they lose their counselor. That's their problem. You know, it goes back to the counselor. And people say, well, one counselor's going to have a lot more students together. That's true, but it equals out every 4 years. You know, you got to look at those types of things. 72 regular teachers be $3,600,000 approximately. Here's the cost of those things. So you got a subtotal to run on one high school, not counting energy and all that other stuff and maintenance, which I didn't have those numbers, about $4.085 million to run a high school each year. And that's about as low as you're going to get it, isn't it? Anybody disagree with that? Everybody understand how I got my numbers? Now, if I can get this down a little further. Okay. The number of teachers does not include Title I special ed. These are federal programs. It'll probably drop a little lower than that because I'm not even including those types of things. I'm talking about local money only. Okay? Because that's what we used to have to look at. As far as Title I special ed, that will have to be according to how much money they have to adjust that. It's going to have to adjust every year according to the budget. That's just common sense. One high school, the maximum would be 1,438, but if you take out the CTE, it's going to be smaller. Does that make sense? Anybody disagree with that? I just ignore that other thing. That's it. I'll put it there for fun. I just don't call it Carter County High School. Since we don't have any bears in Carter County, we've got Highlanders and Rangers and everything else. I thought I'd come with something we didn't have. Something that's native to the area. I thought about putting copperheads.
Possums.
There you go.
Possums.
No, we don't want to lay them on top of that. Roadkill.
We got plenty of possums. and
Yeah, we got a lot of possums. But I thought a bear would be pretty good, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for fun. And one
you
thing,
could call them stunks.
Yeah.
stunks,
My
yeah.
son was about 2 years old. He couldn't say skunk,
Stunk.
but he knew that it stunk, and it was similar to a skunk, so he just called them stunks.
I can understand that. So,